Hello and welcome to lesson 8.3 day 1. This is going to be factoring x squared plus bx plus c. Notice that I emphasize the x squared here. We're not going to have a number in front yet. That's what we're going to get to in a few days. So it's just 1x squared plus some number times x plus some constant c. Right, and this is where the diamonds are really going to come in handy for you. So we're going to do 6 of these to practice. So I want you to pause the video and fill them out and then check to see if you got them right. So the first one, 6 and 2, multiplies to 12, adds to 8. Second one's a bit tricky. It's 1 and 12. That adds to 13. Third one is 4 and negative 3. Remember, if you have to multiply to a negative, one of your factors needs to be negative. And if you want to add to a positive, the smaller number needs to be made negative. So this one is a little tricky. I'm multiplying to a positive and adding to a negative. That means both of my factors need to be negative. So it's negative 3 and negative 6. That's going to multiply to a positive because negative times negative is a positive, but it's going to add to a negative number. This one I want to multiply to a negative, and the only factors are 13 are 1 and 13. If I want to add to a positive, I need to make this smaller factor negative. This one I want to multiply to a negative and add to a negative, so again, one of my factors needs to be negative. And if I want to add to a negative, the bigger one needs to be made negative. So I have negative 10 and 2. So I want you to keep this in mind when you're doing these factoring problems because that's really all you're going to need to do. Okay, so we have something, we're learning about quadratics here. That's when we have a squared, remember? Degree 2. So we're going to take x squared plus bx plus c and turn it into this part with the 2 parentheses. And we're familiar with that because we've multiplied them before. So I want to start with a review problem. So pause the video and make your box and multiply this out. So your answer should be x squared plus 10x plus 25. So I want you to notice is that 5 plus 5 is 10, that's my middle, and 5 times 5 is 25, and that's my ending term. See if you can pick up that pattern on the next couple. So now I'm going to give you the box and I want you to work backwards. So x times x is what gives me x squared. X times 4 gives me 4x. X times 3 gives me 3x. And then 3 times 4 gives me 12. So the original problem to this was x plus 4 times x plus 3. Notice that 4 plus 3 is 7x. And 4 times 3 is 12. If I write out the answer to this, it's x squared plus 7x plus 12. Notice the two numbers added give you the middle term and the two numbers multiplied give you the last term. So let's see if that holds true for this one. So again, x times x gives me x squared. X times a negative 2 gives me negative 2x. X times 4 gives me 4x. And 4 times negative 2 gives me negative 8. If I were to write out the original answer to this, it's x squared plus 2x minus 8, because remember you can always combine these two terms. What they multiplied at first was x minus 2, x plus 4. And I'm just going to write the answer that we got. Now let's check. Negative 2 plus 4 is positive 2. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, so that pattern has held true. So it says, what do you notice? What pattern do you notice? Well, you add the two numbers to get the middle term. You multiply the two numbers to get the last term. Okay? So that's why we've been doing these diamond problems so much, is you want to multiply at the top, add to the bottom, because that gets you your middle term and your last term. You're going to do this in class, so I'm going to skip this and we're going to jump right into our problems. So it's converting to factored form. So I'm going to draw an X instead of a diamond, so the top is what I want to multiply to. The bottom is what I want to add to. Oops. Alright, so I want to multiply to 7. That's my last number. And want to add to 8. So I'm looking for factors of 7 that add to 8. The only factors of 7 are 1 and 7. So my factored form is going to be x plus 1 x plus 7, and the nice thing is you can check this just by doing your box or doing the FOIL method. So x times x is x squared, x times 7 is 7x, 1 times x is 1x, and 1 times 7 is 7. The two middle numbers add to 8x. So I checked my answer and I got it correct. So now you're going to really see how these diamond problems are going to help you out. So that's the easiest example of this to start. Alright, now we're going to move on when we have some negatives and positives, okay? So always start by drawing your diamond if you prefer, but I draw the x because I don't need to draw the thing around it. So you want to multiply to the last term, remember? And you want to add to the middle term. And remember, your diamonds go multiply on top, add to the bottom. So I want to multiply to 6, add to 5. So factors of 6, so multiplying to 6 would be 2 times 3. That adds to 5. So again, your factored form is 2 parentheses. And you're always going to have an x and an x to start because that's how you get x squared. 2 and 3 are the numbers in your factor. So x plus 2, x plus 3. And again, that's your final answer. But you always want to check to make sure your answer is correct. So we're just going to double check by distributing. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. 2 times x is 2x. And 2 times 3 is 6. Check to see, does your middle term add to 5x? Yep. So I've checked my work. I want you to pause the video and try to set up your diamond at least for the bottom problem. I know some of you may still be a bit confused, but just try it. So I'm going to set up my x. I want to multiply to the last number, which is 18, and add to 11. So factors of 18 that I know are 2 and 9. Those add to 11. So you set up your parentheses. X and x always come first, so x, x. And they're both positive factors, so it's plus 2. Plus 9, that's your factored form, but don't forget to check. X times x is x squared. X times 9 is 9x. Two times x is 2x. And 2 times 9 is 18. Check to see, my middle terms add to 11x, so I've done my factoring correctly. Right, now we're going to move into a few harder problems. Right, so pause the video, set your diamond up, see if you can fill that out. So I want to multiply to the last term, which is 60, and I want to add to a negative 16. So I know 60 is big, but just think of the common factors like 6 and 10. I want to multiply to a positive, add to a negative, so both of my factors need to be negative. So remember, when you're setting up your answer, it's 2 sets of parentheses. Starts with x and x because that's how I get x squared. In this case, it's going to be minus 6 and minus 10. That's my factored form. Don't forget to check your answer. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 10 is negative 10x. Negative 6 times x is negative 6. And negative 6 times negative 10 turns into a positive 60. Check your middle terms. Negative 6x plus negative 10x is negative 16x. So I've done it correctly. Alright, for this next one, I'm going to set my x up. I'm going to multiply to 12, add to a negative 7. Again, when you want to multiply to a positive and add to a negative, both your factors need to be negative. So I'm going to have negative 4 and negative 3. Because 4 times 3 is 12. Negative 4 plus negative 3 is negative 7. So my factored form is going to be, remember again, it starts with x and x because that gets you x squared, minus 4 and minus 3. Don't forget to check your answer. And again, I'm doing the FOIL method on this, but you could always draw your box. X squared minus 3x, negative 4x, and negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12. Check your middle terms. That's a negative 7x, so I've done my factoring correctly. Alright, now this one is a little bit different. The last term's negative, not the middle term, so we're trying to multiply to a negative 16 but add to a positive. That means one of your factors needs to be negative. So what multiplies to 16 is 8 and 2. Oops, that's a funny 8. If I want to add to a positive, the smaller number needs to be negative, so then 2 is going to be negative. So when I go to factor, again, x and x give me the x squared, and a positive 8 and a negative 2 give me a negative 16, but adds to 6. Check your answer. X times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. 8 times x is 8x. 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. My middle numbers should add to 6, which they do. Okay. Pause the video and try the second one on your own. I want you to try to get through completely. Alright, multiplying to a negative 15, adding to a positive 2. Remember, one of your factors needs to be negative, so 5 and 3 multiplies to a positive 15. I want to multiply to a negative, but I want to add to a positive, so the smaller factor needs to be negative. So my final answer is x plus 5 times x minus 3. And we're going to stop checking from here because we're running a little long, and you guys can all check your answers. Alright, we're on the last one, and this one has both of them be negative. So if I want to multiply to a negative 20, add to a negative 8, see if you can find the two factors and write your factored form. So 20 is 10 and 2. And I think we've seen this one on a diamond before. If you want to multiply to a negative and add to a negative, the bigger factor needs to be negative. So your factored form should be x minus 10, x plus 2, and then again we can check our answers, but I'm going to stop so you can get to your on your owns. So go ahead and try the on your owns tonight. I hope this video went well, and I will see you tomorrow.